I'm Dave Szalay. I'm a professor here in the graphic design department at the University of Akron, and this is I'm going into my 19th year here as a teacher. I was not sure what I was going into when I first came into undergraduate school. I was actually interested in the sciences, but I found out about the graphic design commercial side of art, and that I found very interesting, advertising and logo design. And so I had a family friend who was a corporate designer at Goodyear, and I got to tour the facility there and find out what it's like to work as a graphic designer, and that's when I chose my major and chose that direction. But I had been an artist, I guess, for as long as I can remember. I've been drawing and always had a pretty good talent for creating things. So even though I wasn't planning on doing it for a career, I ended up going that way. I think it really has taken me decades basically to figure out what I really like to do, what my passion is. And I think my passion in illustrating comes from the fact that I really love storytelling. All methods of storytelling, from movies to books. I have always gravitated towards that, and I think that's why I started drawing in the first place when I was a little kid. So because I'm an educator, it gives me the flexibility to focus on research in whatever I'm interested in. And so I really gravitated towards illustration early on, but I couldn't figure out a way to survive on it, so I went into design, but my heart was really in illustration. So fast forward a long time, when I became a published illustrator, at least in books, then I decided that I can kind of make a go at it. I had all the skills and techniques that you need to be a picture book illustrator, but I just never thought of it as a career path. Most of my illustration before that would have been in advertising and marketing, but I was already successful in that. I just felt like this was a new way for me to refresh my career and kind of regenerate teaching. It was stuff that I was familiar with, but I really buckled down on it when I went to graduate school and got my MFA in illustration, and that kind of gave me a springboard of a network to make connections in the illustration world. So it's the most comfortable part of my career that I've had. It feels really natural. When I was in graduate school, I met a few people who they were professors, but they were retired from the children's book industry. And and I had a couple classmates that had published books already. I will say that I had a librarian when I was in third grade who introduced me to picture books. And I had trouble reading when I was young, so picture books were sort of a pathway for me to learn to read better. And I had a couple cases where I think a picture book helped me almost not only learn about art, but learn about the way that stories are told, the traditions that the stories are told. And in fact, even when I was in my undergraduate school, I wrote a letter to Dr. Seuss, who was still alive at the time, and I sent a letter and thanked him for his books that helped me learn at a very early age to read and gain some confidence. And I also liked the fact that he didn't draw for realism. His characters were very expressive and unique, and he wrote me back and on his letterhead, and I still have that framed and hanging in my design studio. And I told him in the letter that someday I would like to be able to create books that would help other children learn to read and appreciate stories. So it took me almost 25 years to follow up on that, but I did. I think had I started teaching earlier in life, I probably would have a longer teaching career, but this year I'll have been working professionally for 39 years. So it's gonna be time for me to dial it back a little bit. and I'm going to have to pick what my focus is. I think that I can work on children's books pretty much for the rest of my life. Teaching, I'd like to have my hand in teaching forever as well, but I might need to dial that back a little bit. So my goal ultimately is to reach a point in my career where I can take teaching down to a more manageable level that isn't, it takes a lot of dedication, it takes a lot of time to do it right. And so later in life, I would like to actually get some of my books that I write, my stories, my original stories, and also illustrate them. So my next level is to become an author illustrator. Because I have my foot in the door in the publishing world, I'm on my 6th book, but there are other people's stories. I'd like to write my own stories and have those illustrated. But I have like a bunch of those in works right now, and I have an editor that I'm working with. So I think that will happen fairly soon, within the next year or two. The key right now is, because a lot of my time and effort goes into teaching, I have to keep my foot on the brakes of getting into too much extra work outside of teaching. So right now I'm trying to keep it manageable, and perhaps later on I might open that gateway up a little bit and do some more editorial stuff. But I do think if I do get some of my books, my stories published, I think that'll be plenty to keep me busy. There's a lot of very active published authors and illustrators that are working well into their 80s. Because they love it so much, it doesn't feel like work. So it's not something that you are anxious to retire from necessarily.